as I'm finished using the stones and taking them off the client, I put them onto a towel or blanket on the floor, which is called a sacred symbol. And then after the session, we can look at that together. We can sort of interpret it together.
Hi there. Welcome to the Lifestyle Herbalist Podcast, where we hope to bring you a healthy dose of happiness. I'm your host, Dabney Vaccaro, clinical herbalist, health coach, lover of plants.
And I'm Sabrina Cooper, registered culinary holistic nutritionist and herbalist. Join us as we dive into the art of herbalism, mindfulness, and healthy lifestyle practices to help you achieve a happier and healthier life. Whether you're a seasoned herbalist or just starting your wellness journey, we're here to provide you with the insights, tips, and inspiration for a more balanced and joyful existence. So grab your favorite herbal tea, sit back, and let's get a healthy dose of happiness together.
Today we have Charlotte with us, who is an amazing practitioner who has literally traveled the globe in learning ways to help others, mainly in their traumas, using art and stone medicine and ancient practice that she's going to tell us more about. So let's get started. How you became interested in stone medicine and the journey with studying traditional healers.
Yeah, thank you for inviting me and for this question. It's a long one. I feel like it could take up our whole time together.
And that's okay.
Love it.
It feels like many different threads in my life wove together to lead me to my current path. I would say I've always had deep concern for the well-being of others since being a child, and the memory that's coming to mind is trying to rescue all of the earthworms off a basketball court when I was a kid.
Oh, that's so endearing.
Yes, sweet.
But I've always been an artist since being a kid as well. And in deciding what to study at college, I wanted to study art, and my parents wanted me to study something more practical. So I decided to also study psychology. One population I worked with early on, actually while I was still in college, were women struggling with homelessness. And I did case management. So I was got to lead work as healing advisors or work with them. So we sat together and did art maybe on a theme sometimes, and then chatted about it as a therapeutic modality. So that was kind of my first experimentation into art as healing. Then at some point, I was invited to go to Colombia in South America, where a friend of mine was doing peace work there during their 50-year civil conflict. And she invited me to come work with a peace organization that was working with displaced children and had actually set up a school for displaced children in a small city on the Caribbean coast. And specifically, they were going to put on a workshop or a series of like day camps for displaced children using the arts as healing modality. And it was a group of social workers who was organizing that. And so I feel like that was a good initial dipping my toes into that. And with the guidance of social workers who were expert in displacement and in children. And that was pretty exciting to see how these kids responded. Some of these kids had all been displaced from their homes because of the violent conflict. Some of them had seen loved ones, family members killed in front of them. So it was deep trauma that they were bringing.
Wow.
We did a lot of visual art. And at the end of the week, we did kind of a dramatization where we had the kids make costumes out of newspaper to represent like their old wounds, their old burdens that they carried, their trauma and their scars. and we did a procession, and then they were invited if they wanted to take off their costume and throw it into a bonfire and watch it burn together. And I remember there being singing and dancing and like a celebration. So I feel like it used not only visual art, but all the arts to kind of embody and have a somatic healing experience with these kids.
Oh, that sounds amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Then I stayed in Colombia and did other forms of peace work for a few years. And that, at that point, I decided I discovered the field of expressive arts therapy. And so I decided I'm gonna try to do a master's in that and go that route. So I was pretty confident that I could get into the program I wanted to go to. So we moved to North Carolina for me to do a master's program. And then I could not get into that program.
No.
I applied 2 years in a row and took it personally and let it affect my self-esteem for a while. But during that time, we were invited by another development organization to go to Nepal, and they were looking for someone who would be able to develop trauma healing materials using the arts. This was like
Great opportunity.
job.
Right.
And I wouldn't have been available to do that if I had been in a master's program and doing a practicum.
Right.
So I felt like the universe kind of like
Mhm.
one door closed, but had other plans.
It's great how that works.
Yeah.
That was also significant because my husband grew up in Nepal, and we had been traveling there and living there for short periods and looking for a way to be there longer term. And so we had our paperwork in with this organization to be able to go there if they ever were going to have a program there and send people again, because they weren't, when we signed up, they weren't currently sending people there. So it was really felt very guided and like a path had opened for me that I was waiting for. So that was a 4-year assignment, working in Nepal. And I didn't really feel like I had the training or expertise that I needed, but I felt like, well, like it was an invitation, like I just need to accept. And I did do a week-long training here at EMU, Eastern Mennonite University, in their STAR training, which is strategies for trauma awareness and resilience, in preparation for that. And throughout my time in Colombia, and I guess I just had an interest in trauma and specifically war trauma, and had been reading and educating myself for years. And part of that interest was discovering Peter Levine's work. So he wrote a book, Waking the Tiger, about trauma, and he is, I believe he's a neurobiologist. So he was coming at the study of trauma and treatment of trauma from a more biological standpoint, I guess, and really passionate about studying how animals naturally recover from trauma, and focusing on what's called somatic modalities and techniques for recovering from trauma, which is what animals do. Like when they have a traumatic experience, they will shake their body will tremble. They'll go through this whole physical process to release the trauma and the the chemicals that are released in the body, the hormones that are released in traumatic situations, to let them flow and release them out of the body. So that reinforced for me, I guess, why the arts work. as a route to healing. And I had also been studying and practicing yoga for many years, and came across practitioners working, I think, in Central America who were using yoga as well as a sort of somatic modality to address trauma. So I basically researched what was already being used in the world of trauma healing and war trauma, and kind of gathered best practices. And the assignment was to create materials for use in grassroots communities in Nepal who had suffered different kinds of trauma. So it was kind of a hard assignment. A lot of these communities were of illiterate people. So it had to be, and there basically are no mental health practitioners in Nepal. There are a few in the capital, but the majority of Nepal is rural and very, very remote. So I had to design.
Charlotte, how were you welcomed when you went there?
I would say very warmly by Nepalis. But I don't know if I can say that my experience is like everyone's, because my husband grew up there. He had a lot of friends, people that were like family to him. So we had that support system already. And we had the support system of our sending organization, which then placed us with United Mission to Nepal, which is a development organization that has been there for decades. Yeah, so do you want to expand on your question?
Well, I was just wondering, sometimes when people from other countries come into an area and try to help, sometimes even though the person who wants to help has the right attitude, sometimes the people who are receiving the help aren't necessarily wanting it or see that person as an outsider and isn't always receptive. So I was just curious how that experience was for you in being there. Were they receptive? Were they, what was their take on your way of helping them through their traumas?
Well, I had pretty limited experience. I was not a practitioner. I was there to develop materials.
I see.
So I spent the first 6 months learning the language and the cultural orientation with our organization. And then the next year was spent just working with my Nepali colleagues in the peace building sector and learning from. So luckily, our organization had the model of working with partners, like Nepali organizations, and working with them on what they needed in their communities. So it wasn't like a top-down model of I as a white American am bringing you my idea of what you need.
Right.
I was there to learn what our Nepali partners wanted, and be able to witness all the different kinds of trauma that are present in that culture. So
I would think that if somebody has some really deep rooted traumas, maybe trust might be an issue. And then how do you gain trust in order for someone to really fully be more transparent in what they're going through?
yeah, definitely. I would say I would agree that trust is a key issue. So yeah, after spending significant time just trying to learn and ground myself in the realities and needs, I decided that what I wanted to do was not just develop like a manual or something, but a community process.
Yeah.
So I researched like grassroots support groups models, basically, that have been used all over the world. And I settled on circle process as the one that I wanted to try. Circle process is it's it's used in restorative justice and peace building circles to help communities through conflict and other difficult things. But it's originally Native American, from Native American practices in North America.
So what does that look like?
So circle process is about sharing leadership for creating safe space. So a group of people will sit together in a circle on the same level, either the floor or all in chairs together, to symbolize that, like, there's no hierarchy, there's not like a leader who's dominating, but that they are all sharing responsibility for creating safe space to discuss and deal with difficult topics. So I thought that, so kind of like half the work of circle process is developing that safe space before the conversation begins. So like coming up with agreeing on values and guidelines to guide the conversation. Like, what are the things that will make this feel like a safe space to me, and how can I offer that to you? What are the boundaries? What are the protocols? Also coming up with opening and closing ritual that will keep this space separate from our regular everyday interactions and help remind us that what is done and spoken here is to be respected and kept confidential. Those kind of boundaries.
Yeah.
So how did, sorry, I was going to say, so at like all of this that you've learned and from Nepal and you came back here, how has that, all of what you've learned and done brought you to where you are today, like teaching and what is your focus on? Has it changed? Is it still the same? Are you still learning and growing?
Yeah, definitely learning and growing.
Good.
I will go back to an earlier question though and say that we did do a few pilot projects. After I developed the process, I got to work with a few groups to trial it or pilot it as part of the development of it. So that was pretty exciting. I got to work with a group of widows of the Civil War there in a very remote part of Nepal. And they loved it. Like they said, some of them had never held a pencil in their hands and had never been invited to draw on paper. Yeah, that was an amazing experience. I got to pilot it with a group of flood survivors who had to be evacuated a few different times over the years from their community. And that community included Hindu and Muslim families. And there was a lot of contention about how aid money had been used in the past. So it was a lot of conflict transformation too. And then the third group that we piloted with was survivors of sex trafficking. So there was a home for rescued sex trafficked girls, teenage girls in Kathmandu. And basically I just described the process and then got to meet with core members of the group, like kind of to have ongoing conversation with them as they trialed it. So I wasn't part of their group process, but got to kind of walk alongside them as they trialed it.
Charlotte, I think that's amazing that you've been able to have such an impact on the people that you are in Nepal. Like, that's amazing that you set the coursework for healing for those people who otherwise would just live with this hurt and trauma, and that would be generational, unhealed. So you must be very proud of that work there and that it had such an impact.
Well, yeah, I hope it's having an impact. I don't have that much contact with people there. There was I don't know if you remember, there was a big earthquake
Yes.
a few years ago, and I contacted people I'd worked with to see if they were okay. And through that process, one of my the partner organizations that I was coordinating with told me that they were using the materials with earthquake victims.
Oh, good. That's great.
Yeah, it was, I kind of had to leave the project because my term was up before it was fully, like, all the way translated and being implemented. So I left it in the hands of my colleagues and partners who were very capable, but it was kind of like almost like leaving a child behind.
I bet, your little baby.
So it was really satisfying to hear that at least it's being used in that one.
It sounds like it's grown up to be quite a wonderful thing.
Yeah.
Well, it sounds like our podcast. I was just going to say, it sounds like you gave them a little bit of a healthy dose of happiness in a sense with that woman that had the pencil and was able to draw and communicate through her art. And hopefully, like, she, did you see the process or how she transformed from the beginning, like, to where, like, did she transform, how she transformed?
I mean, these are all people, all the people that we piloted with were not people I knew.
Mm-hmm.
We did have a bit of an assessment, like an evaluation that people took, self-assessment that people took before the workshop and after the workshop. And I honestly can't remember what the outcome of all those assessments were.
Okay. So after you came back, after your stint in Nepal was over, where did you end up then?
Oh, sorry, I want to backtrack again.
Okay.
To Nepal because it's also an important part in my journey. I discovered in Nepal that, like everywhere where there are still traditional cultures, there is traditional healers and traditional healing modalities. So the first stage in the process that I developed was asking people, like, what are the traditions? What are the, in your community that have been used for generations to address difficult things? And one of the really neat traditions in Nepal is like community call and response singing. So like an informal, maybe like parties or gatherings, people will form different groups. Sometimes it's men and women calling back to each other. And it's kind of a therapeutic process. People will make up lyrics and be speaking to each other back and forth. So I considered that one of the traditional healing modalities in Nepal. I never got to study different healing methods in depth while in Nepal, but have done some reading over the years in traditional healing. So yes, sorry, that takes us back to now. I just wanted to mention that.
Yeah.
Of being in Nepal in my developing interest into traditional healing modalities.
Mm-hmm.
And I think your question had something to do with that.
Yeah.
Where you are today, like, how did your learning and your teachings and things in your past of Nepal bring you to where you are today?
So yeah, there was learning about the traditions in Nepal, also in time I've spent in Latin America and Central and South America. I've had the opportunity to be exposed to some indigenous groups and some new ideas of healing. And like I spent a little bit of time in Ecuador with people who were learning about traditional indigenous methods of healing using guinea pigs in their healing practices. And they also eat guinea pigs there.
Wow.
But yeah, all of that. And also I lived on the Hopi reservation right out of college. And I chose to do that because in college I'd come across some Native American authors, and I just felt like I had more to learn, and I had this opportunity to go teach art on the Hopi Reservation. So I would say that was another chance that opportunity I had to be exposed to traditional worldviews. Then after,
Tell us about that experience. I bet it was amazing. Just because I'm sure their lifestyle was very different from probably what you were used to in our secular society.
yeah, and the landscape is like a different planet, out there in the high desert with mesas, and
Yeah.
it's amazing and beautiful. And yeah, I really want to thank um, a few people who, I mean, they have seen white teachers and white people come through a lot, volunteers. And still at the school I was working at, I developed a friendship with a woman who really opened her heart to me and shared some of her incredible life experiences, telling me about those experiences, which helped me open my very Western, maybe rigid scientific worldview
Mm-hmm.
that I had gained even more studying psychology. Um,
Can you tell us a little bit about more of what she shared or what that was like?
yeah, she had some what you might call supernatural experiences, um, which, and then she explained like in Hopi culture, like those were not considered unusual, or it was just a totally different worldview where um, I don't remember. I think it was when she was a child, she once was visited by a bear at night who like wrestled her all night long, and the other people in the house like heard like bumping and thumping. um, and she saw other beings. Um, and when she talked about it to her elders, they were like, "Oh yeah, that's such and such." Um, so I would say that helped break me out of was important in helping break me out of a very Western understanding of the world. Um,
Well, Charlotte, one of the things we want to do while we're here is to promote you. And we want to know more about like how is it that you're working with clients now and with the stones, and tell us more about what you're up to these days.
yeah. Um, so I found stone medicine kind of unexpectedly. I had kind of a dream of opening a space where practitioners of different kinds of modalities, maybe some traditional doctors, could share space with other people who offered more alternative modalities. And so I got a group of people together to discuss this idea. And instead, two of that group told me separately, you need to go to Cedarstone, a local massage school, and study stone medicine. Um, so like before in my life, I took that as a
Yes.
clear indication of what my path opening in front of me, imagining myself doing yoga teacher training actually. I did an initial couple day training and then decided I wanted to do the 15-month training to become a stone walker. Um, and since then have done the training to begin to train others as a teacher. So I feel pretty new on the path.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
So, what is a stonewalker?
I was just going to ask that. So what does that mean? Yeah.
it's an indication of sort of my level of training. So I've done more than just a weekend course, which would sort of the first level is a wellness walker. And then as you go through the 15-month trainer, you become the 15-month training, you become a stone walker. And then to become a medicine woman or a man or a shaman is many, many, many years of training. Um,
So, what is it? What does this modality look like? So, if I were to make an appointment with you, like what would that entail? What should I expect?
What
so
type of healing, I guess?
yeah, I call it I call it bodywork, although there is a treatment called healing hands that's part of stone medicine that is more like Reiki. It's hands-on healing. But for the bodywork with the hot stones, actually hot, cool, warm, and it's for 4 different temperatures of stones. It's more similar to a massage, I guess, in that there's a massage table, and so the person is draped under a sheet and blanket. But when people come to me, we do an intake process where they fill out paperwork and tell me about their health, because there are contraindications. Like I need to know if they have diabetes, for instance. And so we have a discussion about their health needs, what they're looking for, what they'd like to address, if they have any intentions. And then a treatment is an hour to 2 hours. And a really beautiful part of stone medicine is as I'm finished using the stones and taking them off the client, I put them onto a towel or blanket on the floor, which is called a sacred symbol. And then after the session, we can look at that together. We can sort of interpret it together.
So are there different stones, or all of them about the same? I mean, how do you select the stones when you're practicing this modality?
So we use basalt stones, massage stones. Basalt is a very dense stone that holds heat well. And so that's used for heat. And the heat does a lot of the work of the body work. We can use crystals and marble for cooler temperatures. So really it's about working with the heat and the pressure to help relax the muscles, open and close the blood vessels so that toxins can be released and moved out of the system. It works a lot with lymphatic drainage and helping move toxins that way.
And is there anything you work, like just do the stone healing, or do you incorporate other healing modalities in there, like using herbals or aromatherapy, or do you use anything like that to help with the healing?
Stone medicine, I call it aromatherapy. We do use essential oils, and we use sage smudge. And sage, I consider it plant medicine for lowering blood pressure, decreasing the heart rate. It helps clients relax. And then I also use what I call sound healing, using drum and rattle and the sound of running water, so that people feel those vibrations in their bodies and really appreciate the feeling of those sounds. So those are all part of stone medicine. And I part of our training is to learn to respect the lineage of this modality and not mix it with other things. So I've chosen to focus solely on stone medicine and use the protocols as they were taught to me and not mix them with other things.
And how many sessions, or is there a series of sessions that you do, or does it depend? Like, I guess it's dependent on the person, I guess, on their healing journey, right? Like,
yeah, I see benefit in one session, but I think as a gentle wellness practice, you probably get more benefit from longer term treatments. Yeah, so I sell packages as well. And I have some clients that come once a month, long term, who have one client who says that it's been an important part of her healing journey of severe childhood abuse. Yeah. And I've had the opportunity to do a treatment. Actually, I've done 2 treatments with this client who has severe war trauma. And she came in not able to fully relax and lie down on the massage table. I'm not sure if that was just trauma and PTSD or if there were some physical issues involved as well. But by the end of that session, she was able to lie down completely and she actually fell asleep.
Wow.
So I consider that a win.
And yes, that's a big win.
Mm-hmm.
So Charlotte, it sounds like you customize your treatment as to whatever the client is needing at that moment. It's not like you have a protocol that you go through step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, not your process. You listen, you take down what the client is looking for, what they're needing, you assess, and then you make recommendations and do whatever that client needs based on a customization on what they need. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah. And because this is the only modality that I'm familiar with, I don't know how that compares to other modalities, but it's definitely coming from a holistic worldview of physical ailments, especially chronic ones, often have roots in emotional issues. So it's understanding humans as whole beings whose physical, emotional, and spiritual health is all related to each other.
How do you see the future of stone medicine evolving, especially around the context of traditional healing practices?
I will say, so my teacher, Jenny Ray, her lineage is Santi Dakota. And she was, usually traditions are passed down in a family lineage from parent to child. And she was the only one in her family to take up the tradition from her father, Chaz. And she doesn't have children who are taking on the tradition. And even on Pine Ridge, where her father grew up and where she spent some of her childhood, she could not find people interested in learning this modality. And so she and a number of chiefs and elders from the Sioux Nation and also from the Nez Perce Nation, who she also studied with some Nez Perce healers. They all decided that they would give permission for this tradition to be taught to non-Native Americans and off the reservation. So I guess my hope is that this tradition survives colonization. And I hope to be part of that effort to keep it going.
Oh, that's wonderful. And you are a teacher. You do teach this at Cedar Stone, is that correct?
Cedar Stone sometimes can invite me to teach, and I can also travel and host teachings elsewhere. So, and I have not had my first training. I've assisted other people, and so I'm eager to get started. Yeah.
You have a wonderful gift to share for those who are looking for alternative ways of just living. And so if you were to leave today and wanting our audience to know what's the major takeaway of the things that you've learned and what could bring the healthy dose of happiness to our viewers, our listeners, what do you think that would be?
I'm going to steal the tidbit of the day that I heard my elder Jenny Ray give on an interview, which is a traditional teaching that she learned that is, it's stated, live in this breath. So it's similar to the statement, maybe live in the now. It's even more specific to like this very second that it will take to breathe this breath. So the teaching is, instead of entertaining anxiety about tomorrow or regrets, and guilt and all the things that haunt us from the past, to try to be present in this moment and the people we're with.
Charlotte, I love that.
Amazing.
Those are such wise words, really. And if we could just think about that, wow, what a difference we can make in our own lives and just be happy and joyful.
100%.
Yeah.
And if where can we find you, or more information on your teachings and your healing? Where can we?
So I do have a website, and I'm on Facebook and Instagram. My business name is Wild Poppy Healing Arts. So I have a website under that name and Facebook under that name.
And we'll have it all in the show notes for sure. So
you can call me as well. Yeah, you can put my phone number there as well.
And do you do things on video conference? I know that the stone healing is hard to do, not in person, but can you do some healing like virtually for those of listeners that are away, not in Virginia or close to you?
I never have.
No.
Yeah.
Okay.
But like I said, I'm willing to travel to do trainings if people are interested and can maybe partner with me to find a group of people on location.
Yeah. And maybe even put on a healing workshop somewhere that, is having a healing conference. I think you would be great and have a lot to share in your wisdom and your journey and your past. So you are amazing, Charlotte. Thank you so much for joining us today. And I think I'm going to be calling you real soon.
Oh, thanks so much for having me. It was lovely to talk to you both.
Yes, it was great talking to you.
All right, folks. Well, join us next time for the Lifestyle Herbalist podcast, where you'll find a healthy dose of happiness. Bye.